The radio crackled to life in my workshop at 2:47 a.m., spitting out some late-night talk show garbage about conspiracy theories and government cover-ups. I'd been tinkering with the damn thing for 3 hours, anything to avoid going upstairs to the bedroom where my wife Valerie pretended to sleep. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, fixing broken electronics while my marriage fell apart around me. Ben Travers, patent engineer extraordinaire, reduced to playing with radios like some lonely old man. At 38, I should have been living the American dream in our lakeside mansion in Millbrook, Maine. Instead, I felt like I was drowning in designer furniture and passive-aggressive dinner conversations. The storm outside matched my mood perfectly. Rain hammered against the workshop windows, and lightning illuminated the lake beyond our perfectly manicured lawn. Stephen King would have loved this setting, idyllic New England town, hiding its dirty secrets beneath a veneer of respectability. That's when I heard her voice cutting through the thunder. "Craig, I told you the timing has to be perfect." Valerie's voice carried down from our bedroom window, sharp and urgent. "The patent filing deadline is next week, and if Ben finds out before then," I set down my screwdriver and listened harder. My wife was having a heated phone conversation at 3 in the morning, and she was talking about patents. My patents. "No, you idiot. He still doesn't know about the transfer documents. I've been forging his signature on the preliminary paperwork for months." Her laugh was cold, calculating. "He's so buried in his little inventions, he hasn't noticed half the legal documents I've been handling." My blood turned to ice water. 20 years of marriage, and she was talking about me like I was some naive child. But the worst part, she was discussing patents, specifically the revolutionary water filtration system I'd developed that formed the backbone of her tech company's current success. I crept closer to the window, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she'd hear it over the storm. "Listen, Craig. Once we get full ownership transferred to the company, we can push Ben out completely. The board meeting is Thursday. By Friday, he'll be nothing more than an expensive divorce settlement." Craig DaCosta, her chief operating officer, the fitness-obsessed pretty boy who'd been sniffing around our house for the past 6 months, always finding excuses to stop by for business meetings that ran late into the evening. I'd always thought if Valerie cheated on me, it would be with a spreadsheet, not the help. But this was worse than infidelity. This was theft, corporate espionage, 20 years of my life's work, and she was planning to steal it all. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I stumbled back to my workbench, my hands shaking as I tried to process what I'd just learned. My wife, the woman I'd supported through business school, the woman whose company I'd helped build with my innovations, was planning to destroy me. I needed evidence, I needed proof, and I needed a plan. I needed a plan. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. Valerie came down to breakfast, dressed in her usual power suit, all sharp angles and cold efficiency. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe bun that made her look like an ice queen, which, I was beginning to realize, might not be far from the truth. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I'll be late tonight. Board prep meeting." "With Craig?" I asked casually, sipping my coffee. She glanced up sharply, those blue eyes I'd once found beautiful now looking calculating. "Among others. Why?" "Just wondering. You two seem to be spending a lot of time together lately." "He's my COO, Ben. Of course we work closely together." Her tone was dismissive, the way you'd talk to a child asking stupid questions. After she left, I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage. I snooped, and what I found in her home office made my stomach turn. Hidden in her locked desk drawer, the key was taped under the drawer, because apparently my genius wife wasn't as smart as she thought, were copies of patent transfer documents. My signature was on them, but I'd never seen them before in my life. The forgeries were good, damn good, but I knew my own handwriting. But the real smoking gun was her second phone, a burner device tucked behind her law books. The text messages between her and Craig painted a picture that made me want to throw up. "Can't wait to celebrate tonight. Hotel room 247, Lakeside Inn. Bring the champagne. Willie 4, already packed. Ben's working late as usual. He has no idea what's coming. Vor bastard. Almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Don't. He's had 20 years to pay attention. Not my fault he chose his inventions over his wife. Vor. The photos were worse. Craig in my workshop, sitting in my favorite chair, the leather recliner where I did my best thinking. Valerie straddling him, her business suit half unbuttoned, both of them laughing like they were sharing the world's funniest joke. That chair had more mileage than my marriage, apparently. But as I scrolled through more messages, I found something that made me smile for the first time in months. In all her scheming and planning, Valerie had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was too trusting, too naive, too buried in my work to protect myself. She was wrong. I'd never formally assigned the patents to her company. 20 years of innovations, including the water filtration system that comprised 75% of her company's current value, were still legally mine. The preliminary paperwork she'd been forging was meaningless without my actual, witnessed signature on the final transfer documents. My wife was about to learn that underestimating people can be a very expensive mistake. I spent the rest of the day planning. Not some elaborate revenge fantasy, but a careful, methodical strategy that would use her own greed and arrogance against her. If Valerie wanted to play corporate games, she was about to discover she'd picked a fight with someone who'd been quietly studying the rules for 20 years. The first call I made was to Ryder Knox, my patent attorney. Ryder was a thin, dry man, with a sharp wit and an even sharper legal mind. He'd been handling my patent work since the beginning, and he was one of the few people who knew exactly what my innovations were worth. "Ben, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "Ryder, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. If I wanted to sell my patents, all of them, how quickly could we make that happen?" There was a long pause. "Ben, those patents are worth millions. Your wife's company is built on them." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "How quickly?" "With the right buyer?" 72 hours. "But Ben, if you do this, it'll destroy Valerie's company. You understand that, right?" "I'm counting on it." Mike Galloway's bar was exactly the kind of place you'd expect to find in a small Maine town. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the kind of atmosphere where secrets got traded like currency. Mike himself was a bear of a man, ex-cop turned bar owner, with the kind of network that would make the FBI jealous. If you wanted to know what was happening in Millbrook, Mike's place was ground zero. I found him behind the bar, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of someone who'd been doing it for 20 years. "Ben Travers," he said, looking up with surprise. "Don't usually see you in here during the day. Everything all right?" "Define all right," I said, sliding onto a bar stool. "You hear anything interesting about my wife's company lately?" Mike's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. In a small town, everyone knew everyone's business, but there were protocols about how information got shared. "Depends on what you're asking," he said carefully. "I'm asking if my wife and her COO are screwing each other, and if they're planning to screw me in the process." Mike set down his glass and looked me in the eye. "You sure you want to know?" "I already know. I'm just wondering who else does." He poured me a whiskey without asking what I wanted. "Word is they've been meeting at the Lakeside Inn every Tuesday and Thursday for about 6 months. Craig's been bragging about some big business deal that's going to make him rich. And your wife's been asking around town about divorce lawyers." The whiskey burned, but not as much as the confirmation of what I already suspected. "There's more," Mike continued. "Lisa Fenn's been in here 3 times this week, drunk as a skunk, talking about how she's tired of covering for Valerie. Apparently, she's been falsifying company records, and Lisa's the one who's been signing off on them." Lisa Fenn, Valerie's best friend since college, head of HR at the company, and apparently another piece of this conspiracy puzzle. I should have known. Lisa had always been jealous of what Valerie had, always looking for ways to get closer to the power center. "What kind of records?" "Patent transfers," according to Lisa. She seemed pretty upset about it. Kept saying she didn't sign up to be part of a fraud. This was better than I'd hoped. If Lisa was having second thoughts, she might be the weak link I could exploit. "Mike, I need a favor. Can you keep your ears open? If anyone mentions Valerie, Craig, or the company, I want to know about it." "You planning something, Ben?" "I'm planning to protect myself. There's a difference." The next stop was Ryder's office, a converted Victorian house downtown that somehow managed to look both quaint and intimidating. Ryder was waiting for me with a stack of paperwork and a grin that reminded me of a shark. "I've been making calls," he said without preamble. "TechFlow Industries is very interested in your patents. Very interested." TechFlow was Valerie's biggest competitor, a company that had been trying to break into the water filtration market for years without success. They were also known for their aggressive business practices and their willingness to pay premium prices for game-changing technology. "How interested?" $15 million for the full portfolio. Plus, they're offering you a position as Chief Technology Officer if you want it. I sat back in my chair, letting the number sink in. $15 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. And the CTO position would make me Valerie's direct competitor, her worst nightmare. There's one condition, Ryder continued. They want exclusive rights, which means your wife's company loses their license immediately. Her business model collapses overnight. How long do I have to decide? They want an answer by tomorrow morning. If you say yes, we can have the paperwork signed and filed by Thursday afternoon. Thursday, the same day as Valerie's board meeting, where she was planning to finalize stealing my patents. Do it, I said. Ben, are you absolutely sure? This will destroy her company. She'll lose everything. She was planning to destroy me first. I'm just returning the favor. That evening, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I'd spent the afternoon researching the security system at Valerie's company, the same system I'd helped design 3 years ago when they moved into their new headquarters. Amazing how much access you have when everyone trusts you. The building was mostly empty by 8 p.m., just a few dedicated employees working late. I used my key card. Valerie had never bothered to revoke my access, and made my way to Craig's office on the 3rd floor. Craig's office was exactly what you'd expect from a narcissistic pretty boy. Expensive furniture, motivational posters, and photos of himself at various charity events and golf tournaments. His computer was password protected, but I didn't need to hack it. I just needed to plant some evidence. From my briefcase, I pulled out a modified prototype of my water filtration system, one that I'd deliberately sabotaged to fail after exactly 72 hours of operation. I swapped it for the working prototype in Craig's office safe. The combination was his birthday, because of course it was, and made sure to leave just enough evidence to suggest he'd been the one doing the switching. The security cameras would show me entering the building, but they'd also show Craig working late the night before, giving him opportunity. And when the prototype failed during tomorrow's demonstration to potential investors, all eyes would be on him. But I wasn't done yet. I made my way to Lisa's office, where I found exactly what I was looking for. A bottle of expensive wine, half empty, sitting on her desk next to a stack of financial documents. Lisa's drinking problem was an open secret at the company, and it was about to become very useful to me. I photographed the documents, evidence of the financial irregularities Mike had mentioned, and then did something that would have made my old college ethics professor weep. I called the State Regulatory Commission's fraud hotline and anonymously reported suspicious activity at Valerie's company, providing just enough detail to trigger an investigation. By the time I got home, Valerie was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, thinking about how 20 years of marriage was about to end in the most spectacular fashion possible. Tomorrow, she was going to wake up to a very different world. The next morning, I was up early, making coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other day. Valerie came downstairs at exactly 7:30, her usual routine unchanged. "Big day today," I said casually. "Board meeting," she replied, not looking up from her phone. "We're finalizing some important business deals." "The patent transfers?" She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What did you say?" "Nothing important, just wondering how business was going." For a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, but she quickly covered it with her usual mask of cold confidence. "Business is fine, Ben. Better than fine, actually. After today, we'll be in a much stronger position. I'm sure you will be." She left for work 20 minutes later, and I waited exactly 1 hour before making the call to Ryder. "Do it," I said. "File the paperwork. Make the deal. Consider it done. Ben, you might want to stay away from your wife's office today. When this news breaks, it's going to get ugly fast." "I'm counting on it." But I wasn't planning to stay away. I was planning to have a front row seat for the show. The Millbrook Country Club was buzzing with its usual morning crowd, wealthy retirees, trophy wives, and business executives who could afford to start their day with 18 holes instead of a commute. I'd never been much for the country club scene, but today I needed to be where the gossip flowed like champagne at a wedding. I found exactly what I was looking for at the 19th hole bar. 3 of Valerie's closest friends, already deep into their second mimosas, despite it being barely 10 a.m. "Ben," called out Sandra Morrison, wife of the town's most prominent real estate developer. "We were just talking about Valerie. How exciting about her big board meeting today." The other 2 women, Patricia Henley and Margaret Webb, nodded enthusiastically. These were the queens of Millbrook's social scene, and they treated gossip like an Olympic sport. Yes, very exciting, I said, settling into a chair at their table. She's been working toward this for months. We heard she's making some major changes to the company's structure, Patricia said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Something about consolidating ownership? They knew. Of course they knew. In a town this size, secrets had a half-life of about 24 hours. She's certainly been busy with Craig lately, I said, watching their faces carefully. The three women exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Margaret cleared her throat delicately. Ben, dear, we weren't sure if you knew about Craig. Oh, I know about Craig, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I know quite a lot about Craig, actually. Sandra's eyes widened. And you're okay with it? Let's just say I'm handling the situation in my own way. Before they could ask what I meant, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryder. Done. News should break within the hour. Perfect timing. Ladies, I should get going, but I have a feeling today is going to be very interesting for everyone involved. I left them whispering furiously among themselves, already planning how to spread this delicious new development through their social network. By noon, half the town would know that Ben Travers was handling the situation with his cheating wife, and speculation would be running wild. My next stop was the office building where Valerie's company, Aquatech Solutions, occupied the top 3 floors. I parked across the street at a coffee shop with a perfect view of the building's main entrance and settled in to wait. At 11:47 a.m., my phone rang. Ryder's name appeared on the screen. It's done, he said. TechFlow just issued a press release announcing their acquisition of your patent portfolio. The news is hitting the financial websites now. How long before Valerie finds out? I'd say about 30 seconds. TechFlow's PR team specifically mentioned that the patents were acquired from the original inventor, not from Aquatech. They're making it very clear that your wife's company no longer has any claim to the technology. Through the coffee shop window, I watched as people began streaming out of Aquatech's building. Even from across the street, I could see the panic in their movements, rapid, jerky gestures, people talking frantically on phones, the universal body language of a crisis in progress. My phone buzzed with a call from Valerie. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. By the 4th call, I was grinning. At 12:15, I watched Craig DaCosta emerge from the building, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie loosened, talking animatedly on his phone. Even from a distance, I could see the sweat stains on his expensive shirt. My phone rang again. This time it was Mike from the bar. Ben, you need to get down here. Lisa Fenn just walked in, and she's talking about corporate fraud, regulatory investigations, and something about you being a genius. She's buying drinks for the house and spilling everything. On my way, Mike's bar was packed for a Wednesday afternoon, filled with people who should have been at work, but were apparently more interested in hearing Lisa Fenn's alcohol-fueled confession. I found her at the center of it all, holding court like a drunken prophet of corporate doom. And then Ben walks into Craig's office like he owns the place, she was saying, gesturing wildly with a martini glass. Turns out he does own the place. Well, he owns all the patents that make the place worth anything. The crowd around her was eating it up. Small-town drama was better than cable television. Lisa, I said, approaching her table, maybe you should slow down a bit. She looked up at me with bleary eyes and broke into a huge grin. Ben, the man of the hour, did you know your wife has been forging your signature for 6 months? A collective gasp went up from the crowd. This was news to most of them. Lisa, you're drunk. I'm drunk, but I'm not stupid, unlike some people I could mention. She took another sip of her martini. Valerie thought she was so smart, playing corporate chess while you were playing with your little inventions. Turns out you were playing 3-dimensional chess while she was playing checkers. My phone buzzed with another call from Valerie. This time I answered. Hello, sweetheart. Ben, what the hell did you do? Her voice was shrill, panicked. The patents, TechFlow, how did they what? Acquire patents that belong to me. Those patents belong to the company. I have the paperwork. You have forged paperwork. I never signed anything transferring those patents to Aquatech. Amazing what happens when you actually read the documents before signing them. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Ben, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was me thinking I was married to someone with integrity. How long have you been sleeping with Craig? Another pause. I don't know what you're talking about. Hotel room 247, Lakeside Inn. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Should I continue? I heard her intake of breath. Ben, please. We can work this out. The company is finished. Your board meeting today must have been very interesting. What did they say when they found out their primary revenue source just disappeared? They want my resignation, she whispered. Smart board. Ben, please. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of marriage that you were willing to throw away for Craig DaCosta and a corporate power play. You made your choice, Valerie. Now live with it. I hung up and turned back to Lisa, who had been listening to my half of the conversation with obvious delight. That was beautiful, she said, raising her glass in a toast. To Ben Travers, the smartest man in Millbrook. The crowd cheered, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. The charity gala at the Millbrook Grand Hotel was the social event of the season, and under normal circumstances, Valerie would have spent weeks planning her outfit and networking strategy. Tonight, she looked like she'd gotten dressed in the dark during an earthquake. I, on the other hand, had never looked better. I'd bought a new tuxedo for the occasion. Italian silk, perfectly tailored, the kind of outfit that announced you were someone worth paying attention to. The contrast between us was stark and intentional. Ben, called out Mayor Davidson, approaching with his usual politician's smile. Congratulations on your new position with TechFlow. Quite a coup. The news had traveled fast. In less than 8 hours, I'd gone from being Valerie's inventor husband to the new CTO who destroyed Aquatech. The shift in how people treated me was remarkable. Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking forward to the new challenges. And what about Aquatech? Terrible shame about the company's troubles. Before I could answer, Craig appeared at my elbow, looking like he'd aged 5 years in one day. His usual confident swagger was gone, replaced by the desperate energy of a man watching his world collapse. Ben, we need to talk, he said, his voice low and urgent. Do we? I can't imagine what we'd have to discuss. You know exactly what we need to discuss. This vendetta of yours. Vendetta, I laughed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Craig, I simply sold my patents to the highest bidder. Basic capitalism. I thought you'd approve. His face flushed red. You destroyed the company. You destroyed people's livelihoods. I protected my intellectual property. If that destroyed your company, maybe your company was built on a foundation of theft. The conversation was attracting attention now. Other guests were pretending to mingle while obviously listening to every word. You want to know what I think happened? I continued, my voice carrying across the room. I think someone at Aquatech was planning to steal patents that didn't belong to them. I think someone was forging signatures and falsifying documents. And I think when that someone got caught, they decided to blame the victim instead of taking responsibility. Craig's hands clenched into fists. You son of a gentleman! Mayor Davidson stepped between us, his politician's instincts kicking in. Perhaps this conversation would be better held in private? No need, I said, straightening my tie. Craig and I understand each other perfectly, don't we, Craig? Craig stared at me with pure hatred, but he was smart enough not to make a scene at a public event. He turned and walked away, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely controlled rage. He was going to do something stupid. I was counting on it. 20 minutes later, I was in the hotel parking garage, having stepped out for some air and to take a call from Ryder about finalizing my employment contract with TechFlow. The garage was dimly lit and mostly empty, perfect for the confrontation I knew was coming. I heard footsteps echoing off the concrete walls and turned to see Craig approaching, no longer bothering to hide his anger. You think you're so smart, he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. You think you've won. I don't think I've won, Craig. I know I've won. Valerie loves me. She's going to leave you anyway, patents or no patents. Valerie loves your potential earning capacity. Without that, you're just another middle-aged man with a gym membership. He took a step closer, his fists clenched. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know she's been using you just as much as she's been using me. The difference is, I figured it out before it was too late. She's not using me. We're in love. Then why hasn't she left me yet? It's been 6 months, Craig. If she really loved you, she'd have filed for divorce already. Instead, she's been trying to steal my patents so she could afford to leave me. You're not her great love story. You're her exit strategy. The doubt that flickered across his face was almost worth the entire ordeal. You're lying, am I? When was the last time she talked about your future together? When was the last time she mentioned leaving me for you, instead of just complaining about me? Craig's face went white. I could see him thinking back through their conversations, realizing that I was right. She's been playing both of us, Craig. The difference is, I'm done being played. Where's your see? That's when he snapped. Craig rushed at me with a roar of rage, but 20 years of marriage to Valerie had taught me to expect the unexpected. I sidestepped his charge and watched as he crashed into the concrete pillar behind me. Feel better? I asked as he picked himself up, rubbing his shoulder. This isn't over, he snarled. Yes, it is. Your company is finished. Your relationship with my wife is finished. And your career in this town is finished. I'd suggest updating your resume. I started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Craig, you might want to check your office safe. I think you'll find that prototype you've been working on is about to fail spectacularly. Something about sabotaged components. The board is going to want to know how that happened. His face went pale. You set me up. I gave you exactly what you deserved. The same thing you were planning to give me. I left him standing in the parking garage, staring after me with the dawning realization that he'd been outplayed by someone he'd underestimated. But the night wasn't over yet. When I got home, I found Valerie waiting in the living room, still wearing her gala dress, but looking like she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled, and her hands were shaking. Ben, we need to talk. I think we've said everything that needs to be said. Please, please sit down. Against my better judgment, I sat across from her, keeping the coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. I know you hate me right now, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you have every right to hate me, but I need you to understand. Understand what? That you've been cheating on me? That you've been stealing from me? That you've been planning to destroy me? Trust me, I understand perfectly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Craig and it just happened. And the patents, I thought you'd never notice. You were so focused on your work, and I was trying to build something, you were trying to steal something. There's a difference. She looked up at me with those blue eyes that had once made me forget my own name. I still love you. No, you don't. You love what I can provide for you. You love the security, the lifestyle, the social status. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did. Ben, please, we can start over. Valerie, it's over. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. You'll be served papers tomorrow. Her face crumpled. You can't do this. The company, my reputation, should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. She stood up abruptly, her sadness transforming into anger. You think you're so noble, so righteous, but you're just as vindictive as I am. You destroyed everything out of spite. I protected myself. That's not vindictive, that's survival. You could have just confronted me. We could have worked it out, like you worked it out with Craig? Like you worked it out when you were forging my signature? Valerie, you made your choices. Now live with the consequences. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if there was any angle left to play. The house, she said finally. I get half the house in the divorce. Actually, you don't. The house is in my name only. I bought it before we were married, remember? You insisted on keeping your maiden name and your financial independence. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. You can't. Check the deed, Valerie. Check the mortgage papers. Check any legal document related to this house. Your name isn't on any of them. She sank back into her chair, the full scope of her situation finally hitting her. No company, no job, no house, no husband, and soon no money. I have nothing, she whispered. You have exactly what you gave me. Nothing. The only difference is, I'm not surprised by it. She looked up at me one more time, and I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Genuine fear. What am I supposed to do now? I don't know, Valerie. But I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're very resourceful when you need to be. I stood up and headed for the stairs. Ben, she called after me. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I paused at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. The next morning brought gray skies and the kind of cold October rain that seemed to seep into your bones. I was in my workshop by 6 a.m., not because I had work to do, but because I wanted to be somewhere that felt like mine when Valerie received the divorce papers. I heard the doorbell ring at exactly 8:30. Process servers were nothing if not punctual. 10 minutes later, Valerie burst into the workshop, still in her bathrobe, clutching the legal documents like they were evidence of war crimes. Irreconcilable differences? She screamed. 20 years of marriage, and you cite irreconcilable differences? Would you prefer adultery and fraud? Because I have evidence for both. Ben, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Valerie, stop. Just stop. I set down my coffee and looked at her directly. This isn't a mistake you made. This is who you are. You saw an opportunity to get what you wanted, and you took it, regardless of who got hurt. That's not a marriage problem. That's a character problem. She slumped against the doorframe, the fight going out of her. What about the prenup? What prenup? You refused to sign one, remember? Said it showed a lack of trust. Her eyes widened as she realized what that meant. In Maine, without a prenup, she was entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. But most of our assets were either in my name alone or were about to be worthless. The patents were developed during our marriage, she said desperately. I'm entitled to half their value. The patents were sold before the divorce was filed. The money from that sale is going into a separate account that predates our marriage. Good luck proving community property on that. I could see her mind racing, trying to find some angle, some loophole. I'll fight this, she said. I'll get the best lawyer in the state. With what money? Your company is bankrupt, remember? And I doubt Craig is in a position to help you financially. Your parents disowned you when you dropped out of law school to marry me. I don't think they're going to be eager to fund your divorce attorney. The color drained from her face as the reality of her situation sank in. She really did have nothing. Ben, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. This was the woman I'd loved for 20 years, the woman I'd built a life with. But then I remembered the photos on her phone, the forged documents, the months of lies and betrayal. You did this, Valerie, not me. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. I thought that was